The grand throne room of the Zalaxian Empire stretched for hundreds of meters in every direction.
Its walls were made from pure crystallized starlight, captured from dying suns and shaped into impossible architecture. Emperor Kraxen sat upon his throne, a massive structure carved from a single block of dark matter.
His 6 arms rested on the armrests, each finger adorned with rings that controlled different star systems across the galaxy. Today was special. Today was the day of the Great Exhibition, where conquered species from across the Empire would present their most valuable offerings. The Emperor's purple eyes gleamed with anticipation as delegation after delegation approached his throne.
The Arcturus miners brought rare quantum gems.
The vegan traders offered technology that could fold space. The warrior clans of Rigel presented weapons that could destroy entire moons.
Each gift was met with a dismissive wave from one of the Emperor's many hands.
Then came the turn of Earth. A single human boy walked forward.
He couldn't have been more than 16 years old, with messy brown hair and wearing simple clothes that looked completely out of place in the ornate throne room. Behind him, on a floating platform, was a cage covered with a heavy cloth.
The court erupted in laughter.
The Zalaxians, with their scaled skin and multiple limbs, found the sight of the small, two-armed creature amusing.
How dare Earth send a child to the Great Exhibition? What is this? Emperor Kraxen's voice boomed through the chamber. Earth sends me a youngling? Have they no respect for the might of the Zalaxian Empire?
The boy stood straight, showing no fear despite being surrounded by beings who could crush him with a thought.
My name is Marcus Chen, Your Majesty. Earth has sent me with our most valuable offering. And what pathetic trinket have you brought?
The Emperor leaned forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the boy.
Another one of your primitive machines? Perhaps some of that music you humans seem so fond of? Marcus smiled slightly. No, Your Majesty. We've brought you something far more valuable. He gestured to the covered cage. We've brought you a pet. The laughter in the court grew louder. A pet? Earth's greatest offering was a pet?
Several nobles made jokes about how humans probably brought one of their domestic animals, perhaps a dog or a cat.
How primitive!
Emperor Kraxen's eyes narrowed dangerously.
You dare waste my time with an animal?
The Zalaxian Empire has conquered 1,000 worlds. We have creatures in our zoos that can manipulate reality itself.
What possible beast could Earth offer that would interest me?
Marcus remained calm.
This isn't just any animal, Your Majesty. This is a creature unlike anything in your empire.
It's wild, untamed, and incredibly dangerous.
But
he paused for effect. If you can control it, if you can tame this beast, you'll have proven yourself master over the most challenging creature in the known universe. The Emperor's interest was piqued despite himself. He had always enjoyed a challenge. In his 300 years of rule, he had tamed dragons from the Scorpius sector, broken the will of psychic wolves from Andromeda, and even made a pet of a time-shifting serpent from the edge of reality. Show me this beast, Kraxen commanded. Marcus stepped toward the cage but, then, hesitated.
I must warn you, Your Majesty. This creature has never been tamed.
On Earth, we've tried for thousands of years. It has destroyed civilizations, brought down empires, and turned friend against friend.
Are you certain you want to see it? The Emperor laughed, a sound like grinding asteroids. Foolish human child.
There is no beast in existence that the mighty Kraxen cannot bend to his will. I have made pets of creatures that eat stars for breakfast.
I have colored beings of pure energy. Your Earth animal will be no different.
As you wish, Marcus said. He moved toward the cage, his hand hovering over the cloth.
But, remember, Your Majesty, you asked for this. The entire court fell silent. Even the ever-present hum of the palace's anti-gravity generators seemed to quiet in anticipation. What could Earth have possibly brought? What creature could make this human boy speak with such confidence in front of the most powerful being in the galaxy? Marcus gripped the cloth. In one smooth motion, he pulled it away. The cage was small, much smaller than anyone expected.
Inside was not some massive beast with fangs and claws. Instead, there was what looked like a simple sphere of translucent, shifting light. It pulsed gently, almost peacefully, floating in the center of the cage. The court burst into laughter again, louder than before. This was Earth's terrible beast? A glowing ball? But Emperor Kraxen did not laugh. His 6 arms tensed. His purple eyes widened. He recognized what he was seeing, though he could scarcely believe it. That's impossible. How did you capture it? We didn't capture it, Marcus replied. We created it. Created? The Emperor's voice was barely a whisper. You created one? Marcus nodded. It took us decades to understand it, centuries to learn how to contain it. And, even now, it's not truly contained. It simply chooses to stay in the cage, for now. One of the Emperor's advisors, a tall creature with translucent skin, stepped forward. My lord, what is this thing? It appears to be just light. Kraxen stood from his throne, all 12 feet of him towering over the assembly. It's not just light, you fool. It's the most dangerous force in the universe. It's what destroyed the First Empire. It's what turned the Andromedan Confederation against itself. It's what made the machine gods of Vega go mad. The sphere pulsed brighter, as if responding to his words. What is it? The advisor asked, his voice trembling. The Emperor's 6 hands clenched into fists. It's an idea. A living, breathing, pure idea. And, not just any idea. Marcus stepped forward, his young face serious. It's the idea of freedom, Your Majesty. Pure, undiluted, uncompromising freedom. The concept itself, given form. The court fell into stunned silence. Even beings who had lived for millennia had never seen such a thing. Ideas were abstract. They existed in minds, in words, in actions. But, here was an idea made manifest, trapped in a cage of human design. And, you claim, Kraxen said slowly, that if I can control this idea, I will have proven my mastery? Marcus nodded. That's exactly what I claim. Every tyrant in history has tried to control this idea. Every empire has sought to chain it. All have failed. But, perhaps the great Emperor Kraxen will succeed where all others have fallen. The Emperor stared at the cage. The sphere of light pulsed hypnotically, its glow casting strange shadows on the crystalline walls. He could feel its power from here, a subtle influence that whispered of possibilities, of choices, of paths not taken. How does one control an idea? Kraxen asked. That's the challenge, isn't it? Marcus replied. You can't break it with strength. You can't outsmart it with cunning. You can't outlast it with patience. It exists beyond physical laws, beyond time, beyond space. It's simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. It's in every thinking being's mind, yet here it is, concentrated in this cage. The Emperor circled the cage slowly, his multiple eyes studying it from every angle. If it's so powerful, how do you keep it contained? We don't, Marcus admitted. The cage is just a formality. It stays because it chooses to stay. It's curious about you, Your Majesty. It wants to see what you'll do. Curious? Kraxen laughed, but there was no humor in it. An idea is curious about me? Freedom is always curious about those who would deny it, Marcus said. It studies them, learns from them, and, ultimately. He didn't finish the sentence. Ultimately what, the Emperor demanded. Ultimately, it destroys them. Not through violence, but through something far more insidious. It plants seeds of doubt. It shows people what they could be. It makes them question why they kneel when they could stand. It turns subjects into rebels, soldiers into deserters, and empires into dust. Kraxen's jaw tightened. You speak as if you've seen this happen. I've read our history, Marcus said simply. Every empire Earth has ever known has fallen to this exact force. The Egyptians, the Romans, the British, the Americans, the Chinese hegemony, the United Earth government, all of them thought they could control freedom.
All of them fell. But, you learned to cage it, the Emperor pointed out.
No, Marcus corrected.
We learned to respect it. There's a difference. We don't control freedom, we coexist with it. Sometimes uneasily, sometimes painfully, but we coexist.
That's why Earth, despite being one of the weakest planets in your empire militarily, has never truly been conquered.
You can occupy our world, you can take our resources, but you can't take this.
He gestured to the sphere. The Emperor's pride flared.
You underestimate me, human.
I have ruled for 3 centuries.
My empire spans 1,000 systems.
Billions of beings obey my every command without question.
Without question? Marcus asked softly. Are you sure about that? As if on cue, the sphere pulsed brighter.
For just a moment, every being in the throne room felt something.
A whisper in their minds. A tiny voice asking a simple question: why? Why do you bow? Why do you obey? Why do you accept?
The effect was immediate. Guards shifted uncomfortably. Nobles glanced at each other with sudden uncertainty.
Even the Emperor's most loyal advisors seemed momentarily confused, as if waking from a dream. Stop that! Kraxen roared. His psychic power flooded the room, reinforcing his control, reminding everyone of their place.
The moment passed, and order was restored.
But the damage was done.
For just an instant, every being in the room had questioned their reality.
Marcus smiled sadly.
That was just a taste,
Your Majesty. A tiny fraction of its power leaked through the cage. Imagine if it were free. Imagine if it were actively trying to spread. Then, why bring it here? Kraxen demanded. Why risk releasing such a force in the heart of my empire?
Because Earth wants to make you an offer, Marcus said.
One ruler to another.
Earth has no ruler, Kraxen scoffed. You're a chaotic mess of competing nations and ideologies.
Exactly, Marcus agreed. And that's why we thrive. That's why, despite being conquered a dozen times by various alien empires, we always bounce back. We don't fight freedom, we embrace it. And we're offering to teach you to do the same. The Emperor's eyes narrowed. Teach me? You dare suggest that I need lessons from a primitive species?
I dare suggest that you're smart enough to learn from anyone, even primitives, Marcus replied. Your empire is vast, Your Majesty, but it's also brittle. You rule through fear and force. One day, maybe not soon but, eventually, that sphere is going to get out. Not from our cage, but from the minds of your own subjects. And, when it does, your empire will fall just like every other.
Unless? Kraxen asked, despite himself. Unless you learn to rule with freedom, not against it.
Unless you transform your empire from a prison into a partnership.
Unless you become the first emperor in galactic history to make peace with this idea instead of trying to dominate it.
The throne room was silent again. The offer hung in the air like a challenge.
Or perhaps a trap. Or perhaps, just perhaps, an opportunity. Emperor Kraxen stared at the human boy, then, at the sphere of light, then, back at the boy. You said that if I could control this beast, I would own your world. Is that not what you said?
Marcus met his gaze steadily.
That's exactly what I said. And, now you admit it cannot be controlled?
I admit that trying to control it is foolish. But, there's a difference between controlling something and earning its respect.
Between dominating and partnering. Between owning and belonging. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then, unexpectedly, he began to laugh.
Not the harsh, mocking laughter from before, but something else.
Something that sounded almost genuine.
Clever, he said finally. Very clever. You come here with the one thing that could destroy my empire, and you offer it as a gift.
You challenge my pride, knowing I can't refuse. And you wrap it all in a lesson about the nature of power itself. Marcus remained silent. Tell me, boy, Kraxin continued. What happens if I simply have you killed and send this cage into the heart of a star?
The cage would melt, Marcus said simply.
The idea would remain. And it would remember that you tried to destroy it. Ideas have long memories, Your Majesty. Very long memories. The Emperor nodded slowly. And if I accept your offer? If I agree to learn from Earth about coexisting with freedom?
Then, you'll have achieved something no emperor before you has managed. You'll have an empire that lasts not because it must, but because people choose for it to last.
You'll have willing allies instead of resentful subjects. You'll have strength that comes from unity, not from oppression. And Earth? Earth will be your partner, not your possession.
We'll share our knowledge freely, help your empire transform, and stand with you as equals.
Equals, Kraxin repeated the word as if tasting it.
A small, backward planet is equals to the Zalaxian Empire. A small, backward planet that figured out how to cage freedom itself, Marcus reminded him.
A small, backward planet that has survived every attempt at conquest.
A small, backward planet that might just have the key to making your empire eternal.
The sphere pulsed gently in its cage, waiting. The entire court held its breath.
The future of 1,000 worlds hung on the Emperor's next words. Kraxin looked around his throne room. He saw the fear in his subjects' eyes, but now he also saw something else. He saw the tiny spark of that same light that lived in the cage.
It was in all of them, waiting. It had always been there.
The only question was whether he would try to snuff it out or learn to work with it.
Your proposal intrigues me, human, the Emperor said finally. But I have conditions. Marcus smiled. I would expect nothing less from the Emperor of the Galaxy.
First, that thing stays in its cage until I'm certain we can coexist safely. Second, Earth provides advisors to help with this transformation.
Third, if this fails, if my empire falls into chaos, Earth will be held responsible. And if it succeeds? Marcus asked.
If it succeeds, Kraxin said slowly, then, perhaps I will have conquered something no emperor before me has managed.
Not a world, not a species, but an idea itself. Not through domination, but through understanding. He stepped closer to the cage, studying the sphere of light. What exactly would this transformation entail?
That's the beauty of it, Marcus said.
We don't know.
Every world, every species, every individual finds their own way to balance freedom with order. Earth can share our experiences, our failures and successes, but, ultimately, the Zalaxian Empire will have to find its own path.
A path where I might not remain emperor? Kraxin asked pointedly.
A path where you might remain emperor because people want you to be, not because they have to accept it, Marcus corrected.
Imagine the glory of being chosen, Your Majesty. Imagine the strength of willing loyalty versus forced obedience. The Emperor was quiet for a long moment, his multiple eyes studying the human boy.
You're either very brave or very foolish to come here with this offer.
Both, Marcus admitted. But, then, dealing with freedom requires a bit of both. Kraxin made a decision. Very well. I accept Earth's proposal. We will attempt this transformation.
But, know this, Marcustion of Earth, if this is some elaborate trick, if this idea you've brought spreads chaos through my empire without purpose, I will personally ensure that your world burns.
Understood, Marcus said. But, I think you'll find that freedom doesn't bring chaos. It brings choice.
And, choice, when guided by wisdom, brings strength. The Emperor waved one of his hands, and, guards stepped forward.
Take the cage to the highest security vault. Post a permanent watch. No one is to approach it without my direct permission.
As the cage was carefully lifted and carried away, the sphere pulsed one more time. Every being in the room felt it again, that whisper of possibility, that hint of something more. But, this time, instead of fear, there was curiosity. Now, Kraxin said, turning back to Marcus. Tell me more about how Earth learned to live with this dangerous idea. Marcus grinned. Suddenly, looking like the teenager he was.
Well, Your Majesty, it's a long story. It starts with something we call the Magna Carta.
And so began the most unusual partnership in galactic history. An empire built on control learning to coexist with freedom.
A boy teaching an emperor.
A small world guiding a 1,000-star civilization. In the years that would follow, historians would mark this moment as the turning point.
Not the day the Zalaxian Empire fell, but the day it began to transform into something greater.
The day Emperor Kraxen laughed and realized that true strength didn't come from holding tight, but from knowing when to let go. The sphere of light pulsed contentedly in its cage, patient as always.
It had waited for millennia. It could wait a little longer.
After all, freedom always wins in the end.
The only question is how long the journey takes. But, for now, a boy talked and an emperor listened, and the galaxy held its breath to see what would come next. 3 months had passed since the human boy brought the caged idea to the Zalaxian throne world. 3 months of careful negotiations, heated debates, and slow, tentative changes. The sphere of light remained in its vault, pulsing gently, waiting. Marcus Chen had been given quarters in the palace, an honor usually reserved for the highest dignitaries. He spent his days meeting with imperial advisors, explaining Earth's chaotic history, its failures and triumphs in dealing with freedom.
He was young, but he spoke with the wisdom of someone who had studied his species' mistakes for years.
Emperor Kraxen found himself in an unusual position.
For 3 centuries, he had ruled through absolute power. Now, he was attempting something that felt alien to his very nature, loosening his grip. The first test came from an unexpected source.
The mining world of Theta 7 was a harsh place.
Its inhabitants, a silicon-based species called the Chromat, had been working the quantum crystal mines for 50 years.
They worked because they had to.
The Empire needed the crystals, and the Chromat had been conquered fair and square. But word of the Emperor's new policies had reached even this distant world. The Chromat had heard whispers that things were changing, that the Emperor was experimenting with something called voluntary cooperation.
Their representative, a crystalline being named Shex, stood before the Emperor's throne. Marcus stood to the side, watching carefully.
"Your Majesty," Shex began, his voice like grinding stone.
"We have heard of your new approach. We wish to discuss the terms of our service." The court tensed.
In the old days, such boldness would have meant instant death. Even suggesting that service to the Empire was negotiable was treasonous.
Kraxen's 6 hands flexed, old instincts warring with new learning.
"Speak," he said simply. "The Chromat have mined for your empire for 50 years.
We have met every quota, exceeded every expectation. But our world is dying.
The mining processes are poisoning our spawning grounds.
At the current rate, we will be extinct within another 50 years. And?"
Kraxen asked, his tone carefully neutral.
Shex straightened, crystals chiming softly. "We propose a new arrangement.
We will continue to mine, but at sustainable levels. We will train other species in our techniques, share our knowledge freely. In exchange, the Empire will help us restore our world and give us a voice in how the mining operations are run." The silence in the throne room was deafening. This was exactly the kind of challenge Marcus had warned about. The moment when the idea of freedom would test the Emperor's resolve.
"And if I refuse?" Kraxen asked. "If I demand you continue as before?"
"Then, you will have crystals for another 50 years, Shex replied.
"After that, you will have none, because we will be dead.
And the knowledge of how to mine them efficiently will die with us." Several advisors moved to speak, to demand punishment for this insolence. Kraxen silenced them with a gesture.
"Marcus Chen," the Emperor called. "What would Earth do in this situation?" Marcus stepped forward.
"Earth learned this lesson the hard way, Your Majesty. We nearly destroyed our own planet through unsustainable practices.
We discovered that short-term gain leads to long-term loss.
A living partner is more valuable than a dead slave."
"Pretty words," one advisor scoffed.
"But the Empire needs those crystals now, not in some hypothetical future." Actually, Marcus said, pulling out a data pad.
I've run the numbers.
If the Chromat train other species and we implement their sustainable practices across all mining worlds, overall production would only drop by 15% in the short term. But it would continue indefinitely, rather than crashing to zero in 50 years.
Kraxin studied the data. The math was sound.
More importantly, this was exactly the kind of test case he needed.
Shex of the Chromat, he announced. Your proposal is accepted.
You will work with Imperial administrators to implement these changes. But, know this: if production falls by more than 20%, we will revisit this arrangement.
Shex's crystalline form literally brightened with surprise and hope. Thank you, Your Majesty. You will not regret this decision. As the Chromat delegation left, whispers filled the throne room.
The Emperor had negotiated with subjects. He had compromised.
Was this strength or weakness?
That night, Kraxin visited the vault where the sphere of light was kept. Marcus accompanied him, as had become their routine. It's getting stronger, the Emperor observed. The sphere was noticeably brighter than it had been 3 months ago. It feeds on action, Marcus explained. Every time someone makes a free choice, every time you allow autonomy instead of enforcing obedience, it grows. But, look closer. Kraxin leaned in, his purple eyes studying the sphere intently. The light wasn't chaotic or wild.
It had patterns, structures, harmonies.
It was freedom, yes, but freedom with purpose.
I received a report today, the Emperor said. Production in the Chromat mines has actually increased by 3% since we announced the new arrangement.
The workers are more motivated when they have a stake in their own future.
That's the paradox of freedom, Marcus replied.
People work harder for themselves than they ever will for a master.
Give them ownership, and they'll give you excellence.
But what about loyalty?
Kraxin asked. What about the bonds that hold an empire together? Marcus smiled. Your Majesty, which is stronger, a chain that binds, or a choice that connects?
Earth has an old saying, a friend is someone who knows all about you and still loves you. Replace friend with subject and loves with serves, and you have the secret to an eternal empire.
The Emperor was quiet for a moment.
Your world sent a child to teach an emperor.
That takes either great wisdom or great arrogance.
Both, Marcus admitted. But also calculation.
A child can say things an adult cannot.
A child can challenge without threatening. And a child represents the future, the very thing we're trying to build.
And what of your parents? Your family? Do they not miss you? Marcus's expression grew complex. I volunteered for this mission, Your Majesty. I knew it might be one way. My parents understood.
They raised me on stories of Earth's struggles with freedom.
They knew that one day, I might have to carry those stories to the stars.
Sacrifice, Kraxin mused.
Even in freedom, there is sacrifice.
Especially in freedom, Marcus corrected.
When you're free to choose, your choices matter more, not less.
I freely chose to come here, knowing the risks.
That makes my presence more powerful than if I'd been commanded.
A alarm suddenly echoed through the palace. Both Emperor and boy turned as a guard rushed in.
Your Majesty! Emergency transmission from the Vorthan sector. The fleet commander is reporting unusual activity.
They rushed to the communications center. On the massive holographic display, Fleet Commander Zerx appeared. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship was in chaos.
Your Majesty, Zerx said, his forearms working frantically at control panels. Something unprecedented is happening.
The 3 worlds of the Vorthan sector they've declared independence.
What? Kraxin roared. That's impossible.
We have a full fleet stationed there.
That's just it, Your Majesty. They're not fighting. They're just refusing.
Every Vorthan, on all 3 worlds, has simply stopped working for the Empire.
They're not violent, not aggressive. They just won't comply anymore.
And, sir, some of our troops are joining them. Marcus felt his heart sink. This was too fast, too soon. The Empire wasn't ready for this kind of challenge. He glanced at the Emperor, seeing rage building in those purple eyes.
"Your orders, Your Majesty?" Xerxes asked. This was the moment. Everything hung in the balance. The old Kraxen would have ordered bombardment, made an example of the Vorthons that would echo across the galaxy. But that Emperor hadn't spent 3 months learning about the power of ideas. "Commander Xerxes," Kraxen said, his voice deadly calm. "I am sending you new orders. You are not to attack. Repeat, do not attack.
Establish a blockade to prevent the rebellion from spreading, but take no aggressive action." "But, Sir I am coming personally to handle this situation."
"Until I arrive, you will maintain position and observe.
Any commander who fires without my explicit order will face immediate execution."
Is that clear?" "Crystal clear, Your Majesty."
As the transmission ended, Kraxen turned to Marcus.
"This is your doing.
Your idea has infected my empire."
"No," Marcus said firmly. "This is fear's doing.
Word of your changes has spread, but so has confusion.
Some see opportunity, others see weakness. The Vorthons are testing you, just as the Chromat did. The difference is, they're doing it on a larger scale. And if I crush them? If I show the galaxy that freedom has limits?
Then, you'll prove that nothing has really changed.
That your new policies are just a facade. And the next rebellion won't be peaceful. It'll be desperate and violent, because they'll know they have nothing to lose."
Kraxen's 6 fists clenched.
"Then, what do you suggest, young teacher?" Marcus took a deep breath. "We go to Vorthon. We talk to them. We find out why they're rebelling and what they want. And we negotiate." "Negotiate with rebels?" "The Empire will look weak." "No," Marcus insisted. "The Empire will look smart. Strong enough to solve problems without violence. Confident enough to listen. Your Majesty, this is the test. This is where you prove whether the last 3 months meant anything."
The Emperor stared at the boy for a long moment.
"Prepare my personal ship. And bring the sphere." "What?"
Marcus was shocked.
"Your Majesty, that's dangerous. If the sphere escapes in the middle of a rebellion."
"If we're going to negotiate with rebels about freedom," Kraxen said grimly, "then let them see what freedom really looks like.
Let them understand the force they're playing with."
Sometimes, boy, the best way to teach caution is to show consequence."
The journey to the Vorthon sector took 3 days. During that time, reports came in from across the Empire.
Other worlds were watching, waiting to see how the Emperor would respond. The future of 1,000 civilizations hung in the balance. The Imperial flagship emerged from hyperspace to find a strange sight. The 3 Vorthon worlds continued their daily lives, but anything related to the Empire had simply stopped.
Factories that produced Imperial goods were silent. Taxes went uncollected.
Even the Imperial governors were politely but firmly ignored. And, around them, the Imperial fleet waited, weapons powered but not aimed. A standoff written in the silence between stars.
"Open a channel to all 3 worlds," Kraxen commanded. "Let everyone see this."
His image appeared on every screen, every hologram, every neural feed in the system. Behind him, clearly visible, was the cage containing the sphere of light.
"People of Vorthon," he began. "I am Emperor Kraxen. I have come to understand why you have taken this action. But, first, I want you to see something. I want you to understand what you're truly asking for." He gestured to the cage. The sphere pulsed, and, even through the broadcast, every being in the system felt its touch. That whisper of possibility, that promise of choice.
"This is freedom," Kraxen continued.
"Pure, undiluted freedom.
The humans of Earth brought it to me as a gift and a challenge. They told me that if I could control it, I would own their world. But they also told me a secret: it cannot be controlled. It can only be respected, negotiated with, lived alongside. He paused, letting his words sink in.
For 3 months, I have been learning this lesson.
Change is coming to the Empire, but change takes time. Your rebellion threatens to turn change into chaos.
So I ask you, what do you want? Speak, and I will listen.
For a moment, there was only silence. Then, a single Vorthan appeared on the communication screen. She was elderly, her scaled skin marked with the patterns of age and wisdom.
I am Speaker Milana, she said.
I speak for the 3 worlds.
Your Majesty, we do not seek chaos. We seek recognition. For 200 years, Vorthan has served the Empire. Our scientists have made breakthroughs that benefit all. Our artists have created beauty that graces your palace.
Our soldiers have died in your wars.
And, in return, we have been treated as resources, not partners. Go on, Kraxen said. We have heard of your new policies. We have seen the Chromat granted autonomy over their own affairs. We ask for the same.
Not independence from the Empire, but partnership within it. A voice in decisions that affect us. The right to our own culture, our own laws, as long as they don't conflict with imperial security. We want to be citizens, not subjects.
And, if I refuse? Milana's expression was sad but determined.
Then, we will continue as we are.
Peaceful, but non-compliant.
We will not fight your soldiers, but neither will we work for your empire.
We will simply exist.
And, you will have to decide whether to destroy 3 productive worlds to make a point, or find a new way forward.
Marcus watched the Emperor carefully.
This was bigger than the Chromat situation. This was 3 entire worlds, billions of beings, all making a coordinated choice. The idea in the sphere had spread farther and faster than anyone had anticipated. Tell me, Kraxen said suddenly.
Can you see the sphere from where you are?
Yes, Your Majesty.
It's beautiful. And terrifying.
It's both, Kraxen agreed.
And it's also necessary.
Speaker Milana, I have ruled this empire for 3 centuries through strength and fear.
I am now attempting to learn a new way.
But, I need partners in this learning, not rebels.
If I grant Vorthan the autonomy you seek, will you help me transform the empire? Will you share your wisdom, your culture, your ideas to help build something better? Milana's eyes widened. You're asking us to help reshape the empire?
I'm asking you to take responsibility for the freedom you claim to want, Kraxen replied.
Freedom isn't just the absence of chains.
It's the presence of choice, and, with choice comes consequence. If Vorthan wants to be free within the Empire, then, Vorthan must help the Empire learn what that means. There were hurried consultations off-screen.
Marcus held his breath. This was either genius or madness. Finally, Milana returned.
Your Majesty, if you're serious, if this isn't just a ploy to end our protest, then, yes.
Vorthan will partner with you in this transformation.
But, we need guarantees.
Written into law, witnessed by all. You shall have them, Kraxen declared. I am calling an imperial assembly.
Representatives from every major world will gather.
We will write new laws, create new structures.
Not because I am weak, but because I am strong enough to admit that the old ways are dying.
The sphere has shown me that. You can't cage freedom forever. You can only learn to dance with it.
The broadcast ended, and, across the Vorthan system, celebrations began. But, in the Imperial flagship, the work was just beginning. That was either brilliant or the beginning of the end, one advisor muttered.
Both, Marcus said, echoing his earlier words. All transformation is both death and birth. The empire as it was is dying.
What matters now is what gets born in its place. Kraxen stared at the sphere of light. It was definitely brighter now, feeding on the choices being made, the possibilities being opened.
Tell me truthfully, Marcus Chin. Did Earth plan for this? Did you know the sphere would catalyze rebellion?
Marcus met his gaze honestly.
We knew it would accelerate whatever process began. Ideas are like that, they spread, they grow, they evolve. We couldn't predict the exact form, but we knew that once you started down this path, there would be no stopping point. Freedom isn't a destination, Your Majesty. It's a journey. And it never ends. And if the journey destroys my empire? Then it was always going to be destroyed. The sphere didn't create the desire for freedom in your subjects. It just revealed what was already there. Every empire falls eventually. But if you do this right, what falls won't be the Zalaxian civilization. It'll just be the old way of running it. And what rises might be something that lasts forever, not because it has to, but because people want it to. The Emperor nodded slowly. Prepare messages for all sector governors. The Imperial Assembly will convene in 1 month. And, Marcus? Yes, Your Majesty? You'll be there. If Earth has taught us to let this particular beast loose, then Earth will help us learn to ride it. As the flagship turned back toward the throne world, the sphere of light pulsed in its cage. But, now, the cage seemed less like a prison and more like a chrysalis. Something was transforming, growing, preparing to emerge. The revolution had begun. Not with violence or chaos, but with words and choices. And, at the center of it all, a human boy and an alien emperor were learning together that true strength didn't come from control, but from the courage to let go. The galaxy watched and waited. Some in fear, some in hope. All understanding that things would never be the same again, the Imperial Assembly was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Representatives from every corner of the Empire gathered on the throne world. Some came eagerly, hoping for change. Others came reluctantly, fearing it. All came knowing that history was being written. The Great Assembly Hall had been modified for the occasion. Instead of the traditional arrangement with the Emperor's throne elevated above all, the seats were arranged in a vast circle. The throne was still there, but now it was just one seat among many. At the center of the circle sat the cage with the sphere of light, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. Marcus Chin sat next to Emperor Kraxon, feeling very small among the gathered aliens. There were crystalline chromat, scaled vorthons, gaseous nebulons, mechanical cygnus, and hundreds of other species he couldn't even name. The diversity was staggering, and, for the first time, Marcus truly understood the scope of what they were attempting. "The boy looks nervous," whispered Ambassador Threx, a mantis-like being from the agricultural worlds. As he should. What madness is this, letting a child advise on matters of empire? The same madness that brings us all here as equals, replied Milana of Vorthon. Perhaps it takes a child's eyes to see what we've been blind to. Kraxon rose, and the assembly fell silent. For 300 years, I have ruled through strength. For the last 6 months, I have been learning a different way. Not weakness, but a different kind of strength. The strength to listen. The strength to adapt. The strength to admit that one being, no matter how powerful, cannot hold the dreams and needs of a trillion souls. He gestured to the sphere. This is freedom. The humans brought it to show us what we all carry within ourselves. It cannot be destroyed, only suppressed. And suppression is always temporary. Today, we stop suppressing and start building. Building what? Called out Governor Zek from the frontier worlds. A chaos where everyone does as they please? Where is the order? Where is the structure? We build a new structure, Kraxon replied. One that channels freedom rather than crushing it. Marcus Chen of Earth will now share their world's experience. Marcus stood, his legs shaking slightly. Speaking to the Emperor had been one thing. Speaking to representatives of 1,000 worlds was another. Earth tried everything, he began, his young voice carrying surprisingly well in the vast hall. Empires, kingdoms, dictatorships, democracies, anarchies, technocracies. We failed more than we succeeded. But we learned something crucial: freedom and order aren't opposites. They're partners. You need both, in balance. Pretty philosophy, scoffed Admiral Korax of the military worlds. But how does this work in practice? Who commands the fleets? Who enforces the laws? Who decides?
Everyone and no one, Marcus replied, which caused an uproar.
Silence, Kraxin commanded. Let him explain. Marcus pulled up a holographic display.
On Earth, we developed systems of shared power. Leaders chosen by the people, but constrained by laws. Laws written by representatives, but subject to fundamental rights. Rights protected by courts, but defined by constitutions. Everything checking everything else, preventing any one person or group from gaining absolute power.
Inefficient, someone called out. Yes, Marcus agreed, surprising them. Sometimes inefficient. But also resilient.
When power is shared, no single failure can destroy everything.
When people have a voice, they have investment. When leaders must earn consent, they must consider consequences. And, when quick decisions are needed? Admiral Corax pressed. When the Empire faces threats?
Then, you have emergency protocols, but with limits.
Temporary powers, not permanent ones. Accountability after the crisis.
Earth learned that the most dangerous words in any language are emergency powers with no end date.
The sphere pulsed brighter, and several representatives shifted uncomfortably. They could feel it pulling at something deep within them. Speaker Milana stood.
The Vorthan worlds have been experimenting with these ideas for the past 6 months. We've established councils where citizens can speak directly to leaders.
We've created transparent systems for resource allocation. Crime has dropped by 30%.
Productivity has increased by 25%. People work harder when they work for themselves and their communities, not distant masters. The Chromat confirms similar results, Shex added, his crystalline form catching the light from the sphere. When we were given control over our mining operations, we not only met imperial quotas but exceeded them. Pride in ownership accomplished what fear never could.
But not everyone was convinced. A sleek, predatory being from the warrior world stood.
This is all very touching, but the galaxy is not a peaceful place.
There are threats beyond the Empire's borders. Pirates, raiders, the Silicon Horde in the dark sectors. How does freedom defend against those who would destroy it?
By giving people something worth fighting for, a new voice said.
Everyone turned to see a scarred human woman entering the hall.
She wore Earth's military uniform, covered in decorations from a dozen conflicts. I am General Sarah Chen, she announced.
Marcus's mother.
I've come with Earth's military delegation to address exactly this concern.
Marcus's eyes widened.
He hadn't known his mother was coming.
Sarah continued, Earth's military is voluntary.
Every soldier chooses to serve. They fight not because they must, but because they believe in what they're protecting.
This makes them fierce.
When you're defending your choice, your family's freedom, your future, you fight with everything you have.
Volunteers? Admiral Corax laughed harshly. How can volunteers match conscripted armies 10 times their size? Would you like a demonstration? Sarah asked coolly. Our ship is in orbit. We'll take on any 3 of your best squadrons in war games. Volunteers against conscripts. Let's see who fights harder. The Admiral's 4 eyes narrowed. Accepted.
This isn't what we're here for, Kraxin interjected, but Sarah raised a hand.
With respect, Your Majesty, it's exactly what we're here for. The Assembly needs to see that freedom doesn't mean weakness. That choice doesn't mean chaos.
Sometimes, showing is better than telling. The war games were arranged for the next day. But, that night, something unexpected happened. Marcus was in his quarters when alarms began blaring. He rushed to the window to see ships appearing in orbit, not Imperial vessels, but a ragtag fleet of unknowns. Pirates, raiders, opportunists who had heard about the Empire's transformation and saw weakness to exploit.
All representatives to secure bunkers, the announcement echoed.
But Marcus ran toward the throne room instead. He found Kraxin there with his generals, watching the tactical displays.
700 ships, Admiral Corax reported. Mixed origins. They're demanding tribute, threatening to bombard the capital if we don't comply. Your Majesty, we need to respond with full force.
Wait, Marcus said.
Everyone turned to him. This is a test.
Not just of our military, but of our new principles.
Your Majesty, broadcast to your empire. Don't command, ask. Ask? Corax was incredulous. Ask for help against pirates? But Craxon understood.
He opened a channel to every world, every ship, every citizen of the empire. His image appeared everywhere, and, beside him, the sphere of light pulsed urgently. Citizens of the empire, he began, and that word citizens, not subjects, carried weight.
We face a threat. Pirates seek to exploit our transformation, believing that freedom makes us weak. They are wrong. I do not command you to defend the throne world. I ask you to show the galaxy that free beings defend each other not from obligation, but from choice. What say you? For a moment, there was silence. Then, the responses began flooding in. The Chromat mining fleet stands ready. Vorthan Defense Force, moving to assist. Nebulan Scout Wings, en route.
Free merchants of Cygnus, armed and willing. One by one, then, by dozens, then, by hundreds, ships began jumping in. Not just military vessels, but civilian craft that had armed themselves. Not just from nearby systems, but from across the empire. Within an hour, the pirate fleet faced not an imperial armada, but something far more powerful, a galaxy united by choice. The lead pirate ship sent a confused transmission.
What is this? Where is the imperial fleet? Craxon responded, you face something stronger than any fleet I could command. You face free citizens defending their future.
Leave now, or face the consequence of threatening those who choose to stand together. The pirates, outnumbered 50 to 1 by beings fighting for their homes and families rather than following orders, fled without firing a shot. The assembly hall erupted in something that hadn't been heard there in centuries, genuine celebration. Not the forced appreciation of commanded subjects, but the joy of beings who had discovered their own power.
Now do you see? Marcus asked Admiral Corax. Which is stronger, 1,000 ships that must obey, or 10,000 that choose to protect what they love?
The admiral was silent, but his expression was thoughtful.
Emperor Craxon stood before the assembly. We have our answer. The empire will transform.
Not in a day, not easily, but it will transform.
We will draft new laws, new structures. Power will be shared. Voices will be heard. And the empire will be stronger for it. And what of you? Someone called out. Will you remain emperor?
Craxon smiled, an expression that looked strange on his fearsome features.
I will remain as long as the citizens wish me to. And, when they choose another, I will step down with grace, knowing I helped birth something greater than any one being could rule. The sphere of light pulsed so brightly that everyone had to shield their eyes. When the glow faded, the cage door was open.
The sphere floated free, expanding, touching every being in the hall with its light.
But, instead of chaos, there was harmony. The idea of freedom, finally released, didn't destroy, it connected.
Marcus felt tears running down his face as he watched his mother embrace him.
You did it, she whispered. You actually did it. We all did it, he corrected. Earth planted the seed, but they chose to let it grow. Over the following weeks, the Imperial Assembly worked tirelessly. They drafted documents that would have been unthinkable months before. A Charter of Rights. Systems of representation. Limitations on power. Protection for minorities. Freedom of thought, movement, and expression. Not everyone was happy.
Some worlds chose to leave the Empire rather than accept the changes. They were allowed to go peacefully, though most returned within a year, finding that isolation was worse than transformation. The sphere of light no longer needed a cage. It moved freely through the Empire, sometimes appearing on worlds where freedom was struggling, sometimes manifesting in moments of crucial choice. It had become not a force of chaos, but a reminder of possibility. Years later, when Marcus was grown and serving as Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Council, the evolved form of the Empire, he was often asked about that moment when a boy faced an emperor with an impossible gift. "Were you afraid?" they would ask. "Terrified," he would answer. But fear and courage aren't opposites. Courage is acting despite fear. The Emperor showed true courage that day. He chose to change rather than cling to power. That's the kind of courage that builds lasting civilizations.
And the sphere? Where is it now? Marcus would smile. Where it's always been. In every choice we make. In every voice that speaks up. In every hand that helps rather than harms. The cage was never really holding it. It was just making it visible. Now that we can see it, we don't need the cage anymore.
Emperor Kraxin ruled for another 50 years, but as a chosen leader, not a despot.
When he finally stepped down, the transition was peaceful. He spent his final years teaching, sharing the wisdom of transformation with new leaders. On his last day, Kraxin called Marcus to his side. "That day in my throne room, you told me that if I could control the beast, I would own your world. You tricked me." Marcus, now middle-aged but still young by galactic standards, shook his head. "No trick, Your Majesty. You did control it not by domination, but by understanding. And you do own Earth, just as Earth owns you. We all own each other now, bound not by chains but by choice. That's the greatest ownership of all." Kraxin laughed one last time, the sound no longer harsh but warm. The Emperor laughed indeed. And, in laughing, found wisdom. "Thank you, Marcus Chen. Thank you for bringing me the most dangerous, beautiful gift in the universe." As the old Emperor passed, the sphere of light appeared one final time in his chamber. It pulsed once, a farewell and a promise. The idea would continue, growing, spreading, evolving. Not as a force of destruction, but as the foundation of something new. The Galactic Council thrived for millennia, a beacon of cooperative freedom in a universe that had forgotten such things were possible. There were challenges, setbacks, moments when the old ways seemed easier. But, always, someone would remember the story of the boy and the Emperor, the cage and the choice. And, in remembering, they would choose freedom again. Not the easy freedom of chaos, but the hard freedom of responsibility. Not the false freedom of isolation, but the true freedom of connection. The sphere of light became legend, then myth, then simply the way things were. Children grew up taking for granted what their ancestors had fought to achieve. But, in the Great Hall of the Council, the empty cage was preserved, a reminder. A reminder that the most powerful ideas often come in the simplest packages. That courage can wear a young face. That even emperors can learn. And that sometimes, the best way to own something is to set it free. The boy's reply had indeed stunned everyone. Not through defiance or cleverness, but through a simple truth: freedom shared is freedom multiplied. In trying to cage freedom, we only cage ourselves. In releasing it, we find our greatest strength. And so the galaxy turned, free and chaotic and beautiful, held together not by force but by the countless choices of countless beings, all dancing to the rhythm of an idea that could never be caged again.